Welcome to Mission Evolution Radio Show with Gwilda Wiyaka, bringing together today's leading experts to uncover ever-deepening spiritual truths and the latest scientific developments in support of the evolution of humankind. For more information on Mission Evolution Radio with Gwilda Wiyaka, visit www.missionevolution.org. And now, here's the host of Mission Evolution, Miss Gwilda Wiyaka.
There's no greater horror for a parent than when that phone or doorbell rings and you're informed your child is dead, murdered in a school shooting. How does one ever recover? Mission Evolution Radio TV show is coming to you around the world on the X-Zone Broadcast Network, xzbn.net. With us this hour to help us find our way when the unthinkable happens is Scarlett Lewis. Scarlett founded the nonprofit Jessie Lewis Choose Love movement in honor of her son, Jesse, who was murdered during the Sandy Hook Elementary School tragedy in December 2012. Scarlett became an advocate for social and emotional learning and character development to help children manage their emotions, feel connected, and have healthy, meaningful relationships. She created the Choose Love for Schools program, a no-cost, comprehensive lifespan, next-generation character and social emotional development program that teaches children how to thoughtfully respond with love in any situation. Her website, chooselovemovement.org. Scarlett, thank you so much for joining us on Mission Evolution. So, Scarlett, you've survived every parent's worst nightmare, that of losing a child. How did you get through it?
Well, you're right. It is the worst moment of your life when you're informed that your child is dead or has been murdered. And I have an older son, and my first thought really was for him, and the fact that I was modeling in the moment how to thoughtfully respond, and that he was learning from me in every reaction, every word, every interaction that I had. And I wanted to thoughtfully respond from my highest and best self for him, obviously, as well as for me. I had a lot of time to introspect. I had a very strong faith initially, which helped tremendously. But I have to tell you, I learned so much in the aftermath and just decided that I was not going to be defined by the loss, that I was going to lead my son out and beyond, through actually, and beyond, and choose love. And actually, Jesse, my son that was murdered, helped guide us through this. He had written a message on our kitchen chalkboard that I found afterwards, 3 words: nurturing, healing, love. Now, remember, he was 6 years old. So I do believe that those words were divinely guided, but I realized when I saw that was the solution, and that was going to be our thoughtful response. And we have made that conscious choice to do that since then.
Well, I have to commend you, because not very many people could ground themselves enough and be conscious enough to be aware of anything outside of their pain in a moment like that. The fact that you knew and recognized that you were modeling for your elder son, it's just kind of phenomenal to me that you were able to do that. It's been, what, 13 years now since that time, and you're still very actively involved in the Choose Love movement, aren't you?
Absolutely. And, I have to tell you, this is a huge part of my own personal healing. And I just realized maybe a few years ago that this is my formula for my personal healing and how I modeled this for my son. And I literally just translated that into something for schools, homes, communities. Now it's gone beyond that, and it's used for at-risk youth and in prisons, but it literally is a very powerful formula that can help you take your personal power back in any situation, circumstance, or interaction and be able to thoughtfully respond with love. That is love as opposed to fear. And the great Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, the founder of grief therapy, she has a wonderful quote that says that really there are only two emotions. Of course, we know that there are 2,000, but she narrowed it down and made it easy for us and said there are really only two. All the good emotions that feel good emotions come from love. All the ones that feel bad come from fear. So in reality, it makes it simpler for us. We want to choose love, and love is the strongest response. It's the response that comes from our hearts and our prefrontal cortex, where our critical thinking lies, the executive functioning, rather than our fear center, our defensiveness and our reactiveness. And so I just, made a decision. And by the way, it is a choice to choose love as a thoughtful response. And it is where you are the strongest. And of course, it also translates into a safer, more peaceful and loving world. If you could imagine that we're raising a generation or generations of people, individuals that understand how have the courage to face difficulty in their life, including pain and discomfort, and literally harvest the gifts from within that, rather than being taken down by pain. We know that hurt people. So this is also really my thoughtful response to creating a safer, more peaceful and loving world as well.
So were you directing the Choose Love movement to help the children that could possibly pick up the rifle?
Actually, Gwilda, everything that I do is for all children, including those children that got off to a very rough start, usually through no fault of their own. Something happened to their parents. They did not receive the care that they needed. They didn't get their needs met. And so, that results after a while into anger, and you can actually kind of understand that. And so, yes, absolutely. This program is for everyone, but it's also for the kids that are not learning character and social emotional competence at home. If your parents out there and you're teaching it and you're on it, fantastic for you. But it's in your best interest to make sure that all kids learn this. And I have to make a confession, Gwilda, too, that I was 44 years old when Jesse was murdered. And I have to say, I didn't have all the essential life skills necessary to make the best choices in my own life. When I reflect back on most of the big decisions that I made, like jobs and relationships, they were made in fear. If I use our formula, and if I had known then what I know now, I would have made very, very different choices. But we can certainly give these skills, tools, and awarenesses to our children. We know that they're going to face pain. That's just a given in life, physically, mentally, and emotionally. And it is our responsibility to fortify them from the inside out, to be able to not just manage, and I don't even like the word cope, but to grow, and I say learn from, grow through, and be strengthened by the pain. So in other words, be transformed by it, grow because of the discomfort and the painful experience, not despite it. And that's a very important difference. There's not a lot out there that teaches us that today. So we're very unique. And that's another reason why I made the program no cost, because we want people to understand how to take pain and use it, not be used by it so that we can create a world and leave it better than we found it, which is not the case right now.
No, it's not the case right now. One of the things that happens to a person when they go into fear, if we're going back to what your quote was, is we go into the reptilian part of the brain, and we drop into fight or flight or freeze, and that there's absolutely no compassion there, there's no heart there, there's no spirituality there, there's no logic or reason. It's simply fight, flight, or freeze. And I'm sure that when you first got struck with the news, that's probably where your tendency was to go.
Survival, absolutely.
So how did you and how do you recommend people move from there into a place where you can choose love?
Well, actually, when I got the news, your body does a beautiful thing. It's called shock. And so I would say for about 3 weeks, I was in total shock. However, curiosity is a very important facet to being able to move yourself from your fear center into your executive functioning part of your brain. So, literally pausing, thinking about what you think about, thinking about whether those thoughts serve you, whether the story that you're creating in your head is productive or it's going to continue to keep you stuck in a place that could potentially become harmful for you. And then starting to get curious about the situation. So, in other words, I started to get curious about Adam Lanza, and that was the young man that murdered not only my son, but 19 of his first
Oh,
grade classmates and 6 educators in what is still the worst mass murder in an elementary school in US history. Literally, when I did come out of my shock, I started getting curious about what could possibly have happened to him to have him think that the only way out was to off put what obviously was such tremendous pain onto other human beings. Now, that isn't necessarily everyone's thoughtful response. There's also anger. There was a lot of anger going around from a lot of people, revenge, and I saw that, Gwilda, and I just did not want to go down that path. I know that prolonged anger is as bad for you as smoking a half a pack of cigarettes a day. I thought about what that would look like if I was modeling that for my son, and I certainly don't want that for him. And so I used curiosity and I started finding out about Adam's life. And, knowing that hurt people, I found a tremendous amount of pain almost from the very beginning from him. I saw a young boy who was crying out for help. By the way, at Sandy Hook Elementary School, he went to that school. So, and he went to first grade in those same classrooms.
well,
And,
we're going to have to leave this as a cliffhanger. I hate to do that, but it's time for a station break. Scarlett and I will return very shortly, so don't go away. This is Mission Evolution, missionevolution.org. How can we choose what we feel? With us this hour discussing the school shooting that took her son is Scarlett Lewis. Scarlett is the author of From Sandy Hook to the World: How the Choose Love Movement Transforms Lives. Her website, chooselovemovement.org. Sandy, we were talking about, excuse me, Scarlett, we were talking about the first little while right after you discovered that your son had been murdered and how you moved into becoming curious about whatever possessed the young man that killed all those people. How how did that transition happen for you? How did you move out of your pain enough to even want to look there?
that's a really great question. Well, I am a Christian, and we know and hear a lot about forgiveness. And so I chose forgiveness, even though that wasn't completely popular in our community. But I knew that if I forgave, that I would not go down the same path of anger and destruction that had murdered my son. And so I did that early on, and that helped really allowed me to let go of the pain, moved me literally from my fear center, which is where anger, hatred, and resentment reside, as you had mentioned, up to the prefrontal cortex, and I love the neuroscience behind all of this. We teach a lot of that neuroscience, to where I could get curious about what his point of pain was. I could understand. And then that led me towards compassion. And that compassion made me realize this was 100% preventable. And so we can prevent this going forward if we give kids the skills and tools that they need to manage their own pain.
I know that you've probably put a lot of research into this over the last 13 years, but why all of a sudden this epidemic of school shootings? Why schools?
And that's a great question. I don't think that anybody has answered that. We've had school shootings for a long, long time. It has become an epidemic since Columbine. If you look at the K through 12 school shooting database, yes, unfortunately, there is actually such a thing. I'm just letting that sink in for a moment. It looks like currently it's climbing Mount Everest, meaning it is literally on this kind of trajectory, which is very frightening. I think that every parent in America thinks about, considers the fact that their child might not be safe at school, and the child themselves, regardless of how young, are all exposed to active shooter drills. And so obviously know that there is a potential threat. And if you think about the trauma that is introducing to our kids, and we're asking them to sit and learn, and at the same time think about in the back of their minds potentially having someone come in and shoot at them. So why that's happening, I think that our kids are in a lot of pain. I think it's as simple as that, and they do not know how to handle that pain. Now, when you ask why, I do think that disconnection from one another and lack of character, social, and emotional competence is huge. I think that literally when we took God out of schools, which was in the 1960s, I think we took everything God-like. And there are amazing teachers that love their children, but I think that we need to, and that's why I started the Choose Love movement, literally to put love back in schools where it's part of the daily vernacular, where kids feel love, where they're modeled that love so that they learn how to give and receive it. And you can say, well, obviously they're getting that from their parents at home, but not all kids do. And then on top of that, there are essential life skills that we are not born with. They are not innate within us, that we need to learn in order to become our highest and best selves. And those include how to have healthy relationships and how to manage our emotions to a certain degree. These are really, really important. And that's what the Choose Love movement teaches. And you see adults that haven't learned these essential life skills. I mean, I think that you read about them in the headlines. And so this is something that we can all learn. However, it's easier to teach kids. Kids are more open to it and than adults might be.
Yeah, it's children are wide open, and that does also bring a concern of they're wide open and they don't feel safe in schools. We're trying to learn the 4 R's or whatever it is, and plan on diving under our desk at the same time. What do you see is the impact of that having to be ready for something like that?
Yeah, actually, it's interesting, Gwilda. Run, hide, fight. That is what we're teaching our kids in schools, including young ones. That when there is a threat, when there is a breach to your school, first you run. And by the way, this is different than what they taught Jesse. Jesse had just had an active shooter drill at Sandy Hook Elementary School 3 weeks before the tragedy. And I remember him asking me after dinner one night, Mom, what would I do if a shooter came into our school? By the way, he's in first grade. And I can't believe it now. Hindsight is 2020. Obviously, I didn't drop to my knees, give him a hug, ask him why he was asking that. I literally said over my shoulder, I would run zigzag, and he just kind of went, okay. But, what they taught then was to have the kids line up under their coats, literally at Sandy Hook. And as my school safety friends now say, that's lining up, just for the slaughter.
Yeah, shooting gallery sounds like to me.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. So, and that's the problem with focusing on the attack end of the pathway to violence. We learn by mistake, and we're always a step behind. So Sandy Hook shifted a lot of what we knew about school safety. And so we started doing this run, hide, fight. No, teach the kids to run for their lives. If you can't run, then hide. And if you can't hide, then fight. And this is our solution to having our schools breached by the way, mostly angry former students, which is, we have to start pausing and thinking about what we're doing wrong. And really, what I really wanted after Sandy Hook was for people to take responsibility for the mistakes that they made. And I haven't seen that happen in any situation yet. Schools are immune from lawsuits. I really think that we need to start taking responsibility. And honestly, that's what I did. I thought, all right, I don't see anybody else doing it. So hopefully I'll start a trend by saying, and it's true, by the way, nobody cares about your child's safety more than you do. Obviously, the teachers do, and the educators are our modern day superheroes, and they're actually going to school and in some ways risking their life for your child. But as parents, I think that we think that there's going to be a law that's passed or somebody's going to do something. But, I think that we know now what we're doing isn't working. You look at Robb Elementary School in Uvalde, Texas, which was a carbon copy of Sandy Hook Elementary School 10 years later. So taking the reactive approach doesn't work. And what Choose Love Movement does is a proactive, preventative approach. It's actually not really the way that our brains think. If you really ponder how we have addressed our societal issues, the main ones like drugs, we waged a war on drugs, and now they're worse than ever. We have more deaths by overdose than ever before in the history of mankind. The way that we deal with mental illness is that we wait for symptoms and then we address it with, we address the symptoms with a pill. That certainly doesn't get to the underlying cause. Bullying is, this anti-bullying going against the problem. And we know now what we resist persists. And I've been advocating for going to the root cause, addressing the grievance, and literally helping children, by the way, and big people, adults, big kids, how to learn, grow, and be strengthened by that grievance rather than being taken down by it.
And I love the fact that you brought up that our language alone is, we're going to fight for this. We're going to combat that. Well, isn't that the problem? Is that violence, and that seems to be shown as a solution in the games that the kids are exposed to and the television programs that they're exposed to. Is violence is the answer.
I
How
mean,
much
Gwilda, it's incredible. It's incredible. You know, the movie stars that say they're against guns, but it's hard to find a movie that doesn't have guns and murder in it, even for kids. That was part of the lawsuit that I was a part of for Remington. It had nothing to do with gun ownership. It had everything to do with responsible marketing to children of guns. And, you know, I mean, immediately the anti and the pro took that and ran with it, but it had nothing to do with that. It had everything to do with responsible marketing. And we're really going to have to start, if people aren't going to be responsible themselves when it comes to our children, we're going to have to hold them accountable.
Because again, the messaging out there from the games that they play that they love so much to the media that they're exposed to not only says violence is an answer, but deitizes the good guy with the gun. And if a child is feels that they have a major grievance, they don't view themselves as the bad guy with the gun. They view themselves as the good guy with the gun and act accordingly. How can we turn that around?
Well, I mean, first of all, our society kind of gives us the message that anger and hatred is stronger than love. But in reality, that is not the case. Love is the strongest unifying element in the universe. And when someone is able to thoughtfully respond with love, think about a conflict or a bullying situation. If your life isn't in danger and you need to get out of that situation, those that thoughtfully respond with love take control back of the situation. If you're in an interaction and someone triggers you and you become angry, you've just given all of your personal power over to that person. So being able to pause, to understand that our fear center is 4 times faster in our brain than our brake on our instinctual reactions, to pause, to take a brave breath, to get curious about what the other person's point of pain is, and then to be able to make a heroic choice, because our brains are wired to defend us. So if someone says that they don't like the color of my eyes or something, I might get triggered and metaphorically put up my dukes in my brain. This just happens. We can't control it. It's our way of staying safe. Our brain's number one job is to keep us
Keep
safe.
us safe. Well, unfortunately, we're going to have to take, or fortunately, we have to take another station break. Scarlett and I will be right back to continue our discussion. So stay right there. This is Mission Evolution, www.missionevolution.org. Should we protect our children or indoctrinate them? This is Mission Evolution, missionevolution.org. With us this hour is Scarlett Lewis. Her website, chooselovemovement.org. How teaching children and adults how to respond in such a way that doesn't make the situation worse has got to be a challenge. What advice do you have along those lines?
Well, it's simple. Simple isn't always easy, and it takes effort and learning. But you can teach a child and a big child how their brain works, and you can teach them to pause, to get curious, and to thoughtfully respond with love. You can teach them that anybody that is let's say bullying, exhibiting bullying behavior, actually is coming from a point of pain. They've either learned it because they've experienced it themselves. Obviously, somebody has modeled that for them, or they're just trying to off put their pain, or they feel like they don't have any power in their lives and they're trying to gain power. Whatever it is, you either might know their point of pain, or even if you don't, you know that anybody that comes up to you with anything less than a smile, they're telling you by their behavior what they're feeling and thinking. And in that moment, when you understand that, it's easier for you to get to a point of thoughtfully responding with forgiveness and compassion, taking the power back in that dynamic, and thoughtfully responding with your highest and best self, rather than turning your power over, reacting with anger. I mean, that is just a dynamic that actually has to be taught. Our brains want to defend us, yet at the same time, we give away our power. And that's been incredibly helpful for me in my own life. We face things every day that we have to bring our skills and tools out. I believe that the most important choice we make every day in every situation is whether we choose love or we react in fear. And that's really the outcome of those choices looks vastly different.
Well, it sounds like part of what you're advocating here is total empathy, that instead of polarizing against a challenge, you empathize with what is creating that in the person that you're dealing with. Is that what we're talking about?
That's a really good question, because there could be some empathy involved. It does help if you can understand somebody's pain and put yourself in their shoes. That's what you're talking about. Empathy is important in relationships. But also compassion, and compassion and empathy aren't the same thing. Empathy comes from the pain center in our brain. It's painful. You cannot stay in empathy for another human being for that long before you have to turn away. Compassion is different. Compassion actually comes from the reward center in your brain. It actually strengthens us. It makes us feel good. And by the way, all of the help that we give out to somebody else, we get back in healing for ourselves when we practice compassion in action, which is identifying a need. By the way, that can be for ourselves or someone else. And when we react with compassion, that means when we identify that need, not necessarily, go down into the hole with them or feel their pain, but just identify it and act to solve that issue, then we get the help and healing as much as we gave out, which is really incredible. So it can benefit you as much as it benefits the person that you help. And can you imagine a generation that understands that?
Wouldn't that be something?
Yes.
So if this movement is to make a huge difference, what's your vision for it? Where all does it need to show up?
I think that this movement needs to show up everywhere, in every organization, every situation. Initially, my dream was that this would be in every school, home, and communities, that the shops and the stores would have little choose love stickers in them, so that when people came, they would know that this was a safe place, that these people understood the formula for choosing love and how to thoughtfully respond with love. So there's this kind of universal language between kids and adults. There's a greater sense of safety and compassion everywhere, and unity. That is, I will say, my dream, because it can really benefit everyone. I mean, I've spoken to corporations. I have spoken to governmental leaders. I have spoken to pre-K, and it's really the same message. It's a simple message. Simple isn't always easy, and it actually takes a commitment on the part of the person to actually do the work, and actually, take a breath when something happens and they feel that trigger, and to get curious. But here's the beautiful thing: if you actually do that through neuroplasticity, and that is our brain's incredible ability to change, we know that every single time you choose love over fear, that literally, just that act in any situation, is pruning from the fear channels and adding to your love channels. Is just a little bit easier the next time. You can literally rewire your brain towards love. And what does that mean? It means a life less frustrated, less resentful, with less anger. And what a beautiful way to live. What a beautiful thing to model. You're literally adding towards creating the world that you want to live in, one that is safe and kind.
So if you're when you first start, I'll bet you have to be very, very purposeful about it because we've, like you said, we've wired our brains to a knee-jerk reaction based on our damage. So if you start reprogramming your brain by taking that deep breath and taking a different choice, how long does it take to get to where the knee-jerk reaction isn't there and your honest, immediate reaction is one of love?
You know what? It doesn't take long, because when you do it, it feels so good. And you realize that you are in your authentic power. You have not given it away. I mean, how many times do you do the same thing over and over? Wishing that you wouldn't, maybe coming home to a dirty house and blowing up, or blowing up at somebody at work, or, talking behind somebody's back, or complaining to somebody. That's our brain's focus. Our brain will focus on that. And when you just are aware, when you think about what you think about, really, really important to be aware like that. And then you change that by maybe thinking of something that you're grateful for. That's the easiest way. Changing those negative thoughts. You can't focus on two thoughts at once. So if you find yourself going down a negative path, think of something that you're grateful for. You get an instant 10% boost in mood, and then you're in a stronger place to be able to continue and to thoughtfully respond with love. And it just feels so good. Now, they say that habits take about 20 days. But, this is a constant practice, and I'll tell you why. Because every day we're faced with different situations. I just got a personalized license plate in the mail, and I wanted it to say choose love. You get, 3 tries to get choose love with various letters and stuff. And my license plate came back chose love. And it was kind of like, what, I'm like the choose love lady. So what am I going to do with that? But then I realized, you know what? That's amazing, because just because I chose love yesterday, today, as we know, life is going to throw us a new challenge, a new conflict with somebody, and we're going to have to take out those skills and tools, and we're going to have to figure out how to use it in this situation. But you know what? That's what life is. Life is learning and growing and, moving towards the best version of ourselves. There really is no destination in this. When you've reached your destination, that's it. So every day, when I lay my head down on the pillow and I've learned something, and I've handled a situation by thoughtfully responding with love, it's a good day.
Well, we're kind of pushing the river with this thought, in that that's not what the general mass is doing. And so the belief systems and the reactions of the masses is pretty hard to push against sometimes. Um, but it doesn't take 50% of the population doing it, does it?
No, it does not. No, it does not. And that point is, it's not that much of a percentage of people actually doing that turns the tide. And so, you do make a difference. There is a ripple effect. I don't know. I have somebody that started a quantum physics movement that's on my board. And so I've been speaking at quantum physics conferences, and quantum physics is the study of the smallest molecule and smallest elements of matter. And we talk a lot about the ripple effect in quantum physics, because anything that you think, that you feel, that you do actually ripples out, and it does impact other people. So I think that we don't realize how incredibly powerful we are. If somebody listening thinks that this makes sense and wants to take this into their life, I encourage you to, because the more people that do this, the more the tide will turn. We're ripples right now, but when we come together as ripples, we form a wave. And that's when there is like this tipping point that will make real huge change. I mean, I've already seen the change in schools. I've had people that have said that this has changed and even saved their life. So I know that there's very positive impact. But the more people that we can get to spread this, and by the way, I just want to say we've spread this whole movement by word of mouth and by referral of our incredibly powerful programs. And I want to thank you, Gwilda, for being one of those people that have helped us spread the message. But, help us spread the message too, like and share on social media, and tell people that you think can benefit from this. If you have somebody that's struggling in your family that you think needs support, obviously, professional support is the best. But when you look at the statistics, the average onset age in our country is for anxiety is 6 years old. And we know that over 70% of those kids are not going to get professional help. And, as try as we might to get school counselors into schools, the average ratio between kids and school counselors is about 600 to 1. And in some schools, it's 5,000 to 1. So you see that it's just impossible for some kids to get help. So the alternative literally is teaching them how to have the courage to face that pain, how to consciously use gratitude to develop an optimistic mindset. We know that there's more success in that than a fixed mindset. How to forgive so that their pain doesn't layer, so that it becomes unbearable, and how to practice compassion in action. When you have the courage to step outside of whatever you're feeling, even if it's pain, to help somebody else, you help and heal yourself. And in the process, that loneliness, that isolation completely dissolves. So this is really important stuff for, a lot of kids and also a lot of big kids. And we just need to spread the word.
Well, it's that magic moment. It's time for us to take another station break. Please stay with us as Scarlett and I continue to explore the complex issues of our troubled youth. This is Mission Evolution, www.missionevolution.org. How can we prepare our children for this violent world? This is Mission Evolution, missionevolution.org. We're continuing our discussion with Scarlett Lewis. Her website, chooselovemovement.org. There's probably a fairly delicate balance between protecting our children, hiding them from the world, leaving them ill prepared to deal with it, and teaching them to run, hide, fight. Where's the middle ground? What do you suggest? How do we find that perfect place where between overprotecting our children to the point that they don't develop their skills, or over preparing our children to where they become paranoid?
That's a fantastic question. Thank you, Gwilda. And I think first we need to deal with the fear inside ourselves. There's a lot of fear and anxiety about sending our kids to school and all the things that are happening around the world, and on there's a dark element on the internet. I mean, there's just so much complexity now to raising children. And I really think that first we have to deal with the fear within ourselves. And once we move from fear to, and I'm not saying you're not loving your kids, of course you're loving your kids, but overprotecting them does absolutely come from fear. And we know that that is not conducive to thriving and flourishing that, of course, we want for our children. So it is dealing with the fear within ourselves. And that means action, doing everything in our power to ensure their safety. That means, and I encourage parents, and I wish that I knew this and had somebody to tell me this, that they contact their schools and they make sure that the grievance end of the pathway to violence is being covered. So in other words, you have some familiarity about the hardening of the school, that process, the active shooter drills. But equally as important, and you make sure that the school understands this as well, is addressing that grievance end of the pathway to violence. And that is making sure that there is a comprehensive, year-long character, social, emotional development program. When you call, they should be able to, that name should be able to roll off their tongue what it is, how often they teach it, how they embrace it. There should be a parental component as well so that you can look at it. You know what your student is, your child is being taught, that you can learn from it as well and keep it going at school. There should be a community component. Really, really important, because that is the number one most overlooked aspect of school safety. That is this proactive, preventative piece. Really, really important.
So how much, the whole design of our schools has kind of slipped to where the whole goal is passing the tests so that the school continues to get funding. And that kind of has sidetracked even the educational aspect, much less the aspect where we're dealing with such complex issues that lead to violence in schools. How would we turn that around to where the resources are being used for what really matters, keeping our kids alive?
Yeah, well, the issue with the academics, which by the way have also tanked over the last few years, is also this social emotional competence, because there's research that shows when kids have these types of programs that are taught in the classroom, that their grades and test scores get better. They have better attendance, higher graduation rates, less stress and anxiety, less emotional distress. It is a statistically effective way to reduce and prevent bullying. And then they even have research that goes out to later in life. So decades later, these same kids now have less substance abuse, less mental illness of all kinds, less incarceration rates, and even less divorce rates. And I kind of joke and say, see, I could have benefited from having this in the class too. But I think that this is kind of an overall type solution that is so important, and it falls right into the academic standards as well.
So the reduction in all these things that you were talking about, is that in association with the program that you suggest?
Absolutely. Yes.
So
Yeah.
there's been studies on following through and seeing what effect that the program has had on people as they grow.
That is social and emotional learning as a whole, and there are
Okay.
5 core components associated with social and emotional learning. That's um, critical thinking, it is healthy relationships, it is emotional management, it is self-awareness, and it is social awareness. And so when those 5 things are taught, you can expect to have those outcomes, and those 5 things are a part of the Choose Love movement. We do so much more.
So the parents, children are hardwired to watch their parents. I mean, even from little animals, you watch the baby animals, they watch their parents, and if their parents see something as dangerous, whether it is or not, they respond as if it's dangerous. And furthermore, they remember that it's dangerous, whether it is or it isn't.
Mhm.
Let's face it, we've all had a hard go of it, okay? For generations now, we've kind of gotten uh, beaten up a little bit over time, and there's evidence that this has then passed down genetically as well as behaviorally. How do we start to turn that around so that we aren't bringing our children up with the messages of our history and are giving them an option to have a different life?
That's a beautiful question. And by the way, trauma has been shown to be passed down for 7 generations. So it's really important to make the decision right now that you are not going to continue that trend. And the only way that I know to not continue to pass down trauma is to learn these essential life skills, learn how to have healthy connections, learn how to reframe a painful past into something that enables you to harvest the gifts from it and let go of the pain. Check out the stories that you're telling yourself about what's happened or what's happening in your life and make sure that they're productive for you and your kids. Remember that as a human being, your personal power is in your ability to choose from moment to moment how you thoughtfully respond. We can do this because we have a brain that's conducive for that. So remember in every situation that you can choose a loving response. And remember also that you're modeling for your kids in everything that you do. Don't think that, they don't see what you're doing. Don't think that they're not learning when you and your husband are fighting in front of them. And they are, and they're being damaged by it. And it's amazing when you understand that it's simply a choice and you start practicing a different way. It's possible. It is possible to live in peace. It is possible to choose love, and it takes practice. Yes, it's not easy, but it is possible.
So I have witnessed it, and I know you have, how a loving, thoughtful response to aggression can totally diffuse the situation, can totally transmute the situation. But it takes courage to do that, doesn't it?
Well, if you think that all behavior, all difficult behavior is a cry for love,
Mhm.
which it really is, then you understand that when you thoughtfully respond with love, that's a perfect thing. I had in my research, I also speak with perpetrators. I go into prisons and I interview
Bless you.
school shooters. And the interesting thing is, I can boil it all down into one word. They don't feel seen, seen and heard for who they truly are. And that is that hurt child that, by the way, a lot of us carry around. And we also show the bodyguard to anybody, right? But when we do that, when we put up a false front, when we don't have the courage to be vulnerable, then we don't ever feel seen. And that's what these kids are realizing. And by the way, they are going to get seen. They know that too. When they perpetrate a mass shooting, they're going to get their pictures on the front of a newspaper, and everybody's going to know their name and read about them and be afraid of them. And to them, that's being seen. But obviously we know that we can be seen by being loved. And in actuality, if they had the choice, they would choose that. So it's really important, by the way. That makes it even more important when we understand to be present, to be able to look past that hard exterior that is just a defense for pain, and to see the light of humanity that's within each one of us, remembering there are only two kinds of people in the world: good people and good people in pain. And so being present and doing what we can for those people that are in pain, obviously keeping ourselves physically safe for sure, but also being compassionate for those. And if there was more of that in the world, we would see a lot less misbehavior.
For sure. You mentioned something to start out with, and we're getting close to closing time. I'd kind of like to close with it. Is what role did your faith play in your choice for love? And does it have to be any particular faith, or is it just faith in general?
Well, my faith played a huge part because I knew where Jesse was. I believe that he's in heaven and that I will join him. So that was a big part of my faith, my understanding, but also I know that God is love. And if you look at the major religions, that's what they teach. Even an atheist understands that love is very important and can love themselves and each other. So love is this universal connector, which is why, by the way, I started the Choose Love movement. I saw the polarization happening between the pro and anti-gun that has just grown over the past 12 years. But in reality, we're 99.9% genetically the same. And this love is what we can all come together and agree on. All the major religions, you don't have to be religious to, spirituality, it all revolves around love. Even quantum physics, which we were talking about, talks about love as the attractor that brings everything together. So it's like a merging of science and religion and everything else in between. Everyone talks about love as being the most powerful element in the universe. We know that love is connection and belonging, and really that's what we all crave. And when we don't have it, we suffer. And the fact that it's a choice is incredibly empowering and hopeful.
Absolutely. Well, unfortunately, Scarlett, we are out of time. Thank you so much for coming on the show and for all you're doing in the world.
Thank you so much, Gwilda.
Our guest this hour has been Scarlett Lewis. Scarlett is the author of From Sandy Hook to the World: How to Choose Love Movement Transforms Lives. To find out more about Scarlett, where you can find her book and all she has to offer, visit her website, chooselovemovement.org. This has been Mission Evolution with Gwilda Wiyaka. For more information or to enjoy past archived episodes, visit www.missionevolution.org. But please be sure to join us right here next time as this mission continues, bringing information, resources, and support to our evolving world. And please remember, choose love.